What are you reading, Bert? Really? Cinema, erotic adventures, and film? Dude. Part 4 of the never-ending series on my film book collection. Let's dive in. Let's go see. Let's hurry. Let's do it. Alright. I have a whole lot of issues of Screen World. I have most of the 1970s. There's 1975. These cover the previous year. So if it says 75, that means the films of 74 are in there. I have most of the 70s. Let's see, there's 76. I'm not going to show all of them because we got to race through this. 77, 78, and then some of the early 70s are in there. We got 82. These are by John Willis. And here's 87, and here's 1995. This is 1994, which is an important year. Probably the last really great year of the cinema. You know, the year of Pulp Fiction, but a lot of other great stuff that year. And basically they're just screen credits, basic facts about the films, and lots of pictures. But what they have is just kind of a timely vibe to them. It's like this is the first impression of those years from that time. So we're going to race through that. Okay, next I got the Movie Guide, a comprehensive alphabetical listing of the most important films ever made. Edited by James Monaco and the editors of Baseline. Baseline was like an online service, film service, rating service or whatever. I guess it was a pay service, I'm not sure. This guide is kind of weak, to be honest. It's a 5-star rated guide, like 1 through 5 or whatever stars for the films. Ostensibly, they pick the best movies and just rate them. I think the writing in here is pretty pedestrian, to be honest. I'm not a big fan of this guide. I almost got rid of this, to be honest, but I decided to keep it. There is a lot of factual detail about the plots of the movies, but that's about all it's good for. We got The Hollywood Writers' Wars by Nancy Lynn Schwartz. This is a really good book about the history of the forming of the Writers Guild and also the days of the blacklist, so you get a lot of the struggle that the writers had to go through in Hollywood. Light and Shadows, A History of Motion Pictures. This is a couple guys, Bone and Stromgren. This is actually a good one. This is a good narrative history of the cinema. Not one that probably gets used much anymore, I guess, but I'm going to show this. I got an oddity. I got several 2001 issues of the Video Watchdog. These are really cool little magazines. They're almost like e-zines, but they have articles on all kinds of movies, mainly cult and exploitation and monster movies, but they have other things too. There's Klaus Kinski, and that's when, what was that movie with Shadow of the Vampire came out, and something with Roger Corman, Superman, Planet of the Vampires, Dario Argento. These are really cool things to have. Really nostalgic to look at these little video catalogs and magazines and e-zines. This was something you could get at the video store back in the day. Like the cool video stores had these. Alright, this is one of the greatest of all film books. Gilliam on Gilliam, edited by Ian Christie. This is Terry Gilliam, the director, writer, artist, animator. And he's very wise, and the real revelation of this book is how he talks about how you can make movies on no money almost, as long as you're creative like he was. It's a really, really great read, great book. Alright, we got Who the Devil Made It by Peter Bogdanovich. This is him interviewing a lot of great old school golden age Hollywood directors. He was great at interviewing old directors from the day. He knew what to ask because Peter Bogdanovich knew these films in and out. He was an expert on old Hollywood, and this is a kind of a standard book, a classic. I got the original Hallowell's Film Guide, or at least one of the originals. This is a 1977 edition hardcover. It's falling apart. Here's the original dust jacket that's kind of stuffed in here because it is almost gone, like that's only half of it. But, you know, this is kind of before he put international films in here. It's all English language films. Most of you know about Hallowell, his strengths and weaknesses, and all of those are in here. This was one of my very first film books, and it looks like it. And it was well used, to say the least. The On-Screen, Off-Screen Movie Guide, 1,000 of the Best and Most Popular American Movies. Blah, blah, blah. Ted Sennett. I guess Ted Sennett was related to Max Sennett. Don't hold me to that, but he's got a lot of, you know, he talks about the movie and then he talks about what happened behind the scenes, gives you a little background on the movie. movies. It's kind of cool. It's a cool thing to have. Of Mice and Magic, A History of American Animated Cartoons. This is a nice kind of supplement. This is a great book, by the way. This is a great supplement to his Disney Films book that we talked about in one of the last editions. I've marked a few pages there because this is a really fulsome and complete history of all American animated cinema, I guess up through, I presume, the 1980s. Really great one to have. This was my main textbook in college, A History of Narrative Film by David A. Cook. Great book, really great narrative textbook, history of cinema. It's still being used today. I mean, there's a newer edition, obviously, but this is a Film Factory, Russian and Soviet cinema, 1996 to 1939. This is just basically reprints a lot of documents from that era. So if you're doing like primary research into Soviet and Russian movies, this is a really good source. Now we got the very famous New Biographical Dictionary of Film by David Thompson. David goes into a lot of people who are in the cinema in his very catty, bitchy way. You may love it, you may hate it. I'm in the middle. I'm not a big fan of this book. I hardly ever use it, but you know, he can write. And he is fun to read, but I don't consider it a vital book, honestly, in my opinion. Looney Tunes of Merry Melodies, a complete illustrated guide to the Warner Bros. Cartoons by Jerry Beck and Will Friedwald. These guys were really expert in this area, and this has all the Warner Bros. Cartoons listed in great detail. This is kind of an essential book, in my opinion. It's a good supplement to this That's All Folks book that I showed you earlier about the history of Warner Brothers Animation. If you have these two books, you really kind of have the two great books on the subject. Lost Films, Important Movies That Disappeared by Frank Thompson. This is a really good overview of lost movies and with great detail on the production and the backstories. And this is not the only source you should have on lost films, but this is a really good one, a good solid one as far as titles go. This is another classic college textbook by the great Louis Jacobs. Again, we've seen several of his books already in our survey here. This is basically what it is, a history of documentary film, and it's a really good one. Lots of different essays in there about important movies in that genre. Here's another kind of backstories of the Oscars books. There's tons of these out there. This one's called The Real Oscar, the story behind the Academy Awards. You know, this is a good one. It's well illustrated. It's kind of one of those 70s coffee table book, classic style. Nice to have. I only paid $2 for that. It's not one I look at much, but anyway. Now, Bosley Crowther, the film critic, I think, of the New York Times, back in the heyday, 50s and 60s and 70s, he put a bunch of compilation books out in the 60s and 70s, 3 of them actually, 3. This was, I think, the last one. Reruns, 50 memorable films. He just surveys, 50 great movies, writes a little essay about them, well illustrated, with his opinion. And, of course, he considers these the greatest movies, otherwise they wouldn't be in here. This was one of the very first film books I ever bought. I bought this probably around 1978, pretty close to when it came out. These books are kind of antiquated now. Bosley Crowther is not really talked about much anymore as a critic. People don't really seem to care. He usually seems to come up as a subject of derision when he does get mentioned. It's probably unfair to do that, but anyway, I'm glad to have that. I have good memories about that book. Now, I'm not sure if I got to these in one of the other videos. I know I'd already made a video on these, but then I never used them. I got issues of Sight and Sound magazine from probably about 20 years ago. The greatest movies of all time issue, the Martin Scorsese issue, and, Frankenstein, Kenneth Branagh's Frankenstein. I just picked these up randomly because they came in to have price books. I probably paid 50 cents for these. They're cool. It's cool to have some film magazines around. There's Cineast magazine. That's another one from early 2000s. AI with Jude Law. Film comment there. This is a Sundance Film Festival program from 2001. Never been to Telluride or Aspen or any of those places to see film festivals like that, but I do have a program, which is cool. That's from the heyday of the indie scene. And Facet's Rental Master List. This is a just all the films you could rent from Facets Multimedia Chicago, which I did back in the day. We'll talk about a little bit more about that in a minute. I got this Shocking Videos video catalog. They were a distributor of, you know, exploitation monster movies, kind of sleazy films, semi-porno movies, European movies, art movies, etc. And the video store I used to go to would rent videos from this, and that's kind of funny. From this catalog, really obscure and hard to get stuff at the time. Image Media, the company that still puts out, I guess, DVDs and Blu-rays. This is their catalog from a few years ago. Here's one from Kino Lorber, another label that you'll be familiar with if you collect esoteric movies. That's a catalog. This is the Home Film Festival catalog. I have several editions of that from the late 90s, early 2000s. This was another service that would rent out VHS tapes by mail. I used to get VHS tapes in the mail from them. They're in were in Scranton, Pennsylvania. These guys predated Netflix. You know, before Netflix was sending out DVDs, before they did streaming, they would actually send VHS tapes. And this is kind of how they did it. I did a little sample here. They would send you VHS tapes in like these generic boxes, like these black boxes. And they'd send it to you in a box. The box would have been more form-fitting, so it would have been more like this size. I grabbed the only box I could find that was close. And you get them like this, and then you pay the shipping costs back to them. You paid one cost that included the shipping to get the tapes. And it was a staggered system of, you know, one tape would be $5, two would be $4 a piece, and, you know, three would be $3.50 a piece. You know, it would kind of stagger down by volume, depending on how many you ordered. And you had to get them back in a certain amount of time, and that was cool. I used to do that a lot. I also have a Facets Multimedia catalogs. For those are over here. I'm not going to get them out, but I've got some of the big Facets Multimedia catalogs that also rented out VHS tapes back in the day. These were in Chicago. This is a really impressive catalog, but I have to move stuff to get it out, so I'm not going to. We'll round this out. I got some compendium books on the studios, the RKO story, the MGM story, and the Columbia story. I'm not going to get them out. I wanted to finish this round. And then the last part of my movie collection is this. These are biographies. I'll quickly go through those in the next video. I also have this book, The History of Movie Comedy by Janice Anderson. This got moved from another shelf because I had room over here in the main shelf now. It's what it says it is. It's just an overview of famous comedy movies. You know, it's good. It's standard. Nothing special about it, but because there's all kinds of books like this out there. But this one was one I was able to get cheap.